Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me for this. This is a talk in conjunction with a show I'm having at the Boardman Road Library. So I want to thank all the people at the Boardman Road Library. What a great library if you haven't been there. They also have one of the world's foremost used bookstores. So that's something to see. I don't know if you're a book lover like I am, but it's spectacular. So I just want to thank Ruth Wally, who put this all together, and Yvonne Lobby, who is the person behind the scenes running all of this. So you need somebody to operate this Zoom phenomena here. And I want to just talk a little bit about myself, who I am. I'm a watercolorist, an artist. I was born in Albany, New York, and came down to Ulster County to go to graduate school with my wife. And we got a place in Rosey-dale, and we just love Rosey-dale. So we've been there ever since I've bought a home there and here. Great little community, lots of artists in Rosey-dale. The place is loaded with artists. You can't really walk down the street without stepping over an artist or two. So it's one of the unique parts of this part of the New York State is the artistic quality of people that are around you. When I graduated from school, I began to teach. I taught at continuing education it used to be UTRI-C, but now it's SUNY Ulster. And I taught at SUNY New Paltz continuing ed. And then I began teaching in the correction system in New York. So I taught at Napanock for 4 years, taught art and a few of the other prisons, which was education in itself, something that we could spend a whole hour talking about. Somewhere near the end of my 4 years teaching prisons, I met Bob Angelock, who had just started the Woodstock School of Art in its present grounds on 212 right outside of the village of Woodstock. These beautiful old WPA buildings, huge studios. It was the Art Students League summer program was there for from 1947 to I think 1986, something like that. And they started the Woodstock School of Art thereafter. I started pretty much at the beginning with them. When we were first teaching the first year, I think there was 3 artists teaching there, 3 instructors. And there's 42 instructors now teaching. We have one of the really, really nicest printmaking shops, and I think in the, I don't want to say the country, but it's really beautiful with a lot of possibilities, printmaking possibilities. All kinds of painting programs, sculpture programs. We have survived the COVID nightmare pretty well. We've been doing online classes. And I hope you all come out, and if you haven't been there, you'd come and take a look. So we're gonna look tonight at a slideshow of my work. Some of the paintings are in the show. There's more paintings. I'm going to show you more paintings than will be in the exhibit. There's only 9 paintings in the Boardman exhibit. I paint in watercolor, so everybody knows what watercolor is. I paint in transparent watercolor, so there's another little bit added to it. So I use the transparency of the medium, try to use it to its maximum degree. You're looking at a picture of a Main Street in Rosey-dale. It's painted pretty directly and pretty liquidy. You can see the liquidness of the paint dripping around. I love that kind of stuff. And the details in it have been reduced. So you're looking at a pattern really of light and shadow with a few details, just enough, I hope, to make you see, buildings in the sun and, the quality of the light of the day, the quality of the old buildings on Main Street in Rosey-dale. One of my kind of favorite paintings. So we can look at the next one, Yvonne. This is really a product of COVID in a way, because we didn't teach for almost 2 years, and we were all staying in the house a lot, and I was doing a lot of painting, and I began to do paintings just from, without looking at anything, just from memory and just from, because I've done so many landscapes over the years, I kind of know the elements involved, and began making them up. So I made up a lot of them this last winter and the winter before, and this is one of them. And simple enough, little small ground plane. I find myself using still ideas that were given to me from Alex Martin, who was my advisor at New Paltz when I was there. Small ground plane, big sky plane. And when that cloud appeared, which kind of, to me, in a way, appeared on its own, really, because I did a number of these. In fact, that's the way I worked on these, is I would cut up 8 or 10 sheets of paper, and I would begin trying them, just working on them one after another. And out of that process, at one point, this cloud appeared, and I just loved it. And I thought, well, that's it, that's the image. So I've learned something new this past 2 years about being able just to make them up when you want to. And that's a real joy, the pleasure of finding, kind of making these discoveries. It's really a pleasure. So we can look at the next one, Yvonne. This is Stone Ridge, High Falls, actually. Just as you enter High Falls, the old rock cliff house is on the left. It's now being restored, and the church in the background. And it's very, again, it's very simplified. And I did quite a number of these to get to this one. And sometimes you can see something in the distance, painting wise or image wise, that you're trying to get to. And I just keep trying them. I'll try them until I get it. And this is a product of that. Interesting kind of simplified design. So what do we got next, Yvonne? Some of you will recognize this spot, although I did an eccentric version of it color-wise. This is Route 9 in Kingston, going towards the Rondout area. The church on the right is a Lutheran church that sits up on East Chester Street, if you were in Kingston trying to get to it. And it really has, it's a spectacular view as you go down 9W at that point, because the mountains rise up in front of you, right in front of behind the church. And they're very amazingly huge. And then as you go down the hill again, they disappear. So it's kind of funny. You'll notice I'm playing with lost and found edges. The edge on the top of the mountain, the purplish mountain in the background, on one side it's done positively, on the other side it's made negatively with the sky. So the sky creates an edge. And I'm always playing, and as I get older, play more with edges and lost and found edges. A lot of lost edges in this, where one part of the picture flows into the other. I'm always curious about how much or how little you can say and make the viewer still accept it or still see the picture. I think I think it was maybe 5 years ago or so, when I went to the Modern in New York and saw Surratt's drawings, which are very, very tonal and very soft edges, hardly any hard edges. And that was very moving to me. So I tried to incorporate some of that in my work. You can go to the next one, Yvonne. This is a painting done directly in the Adirondacks at Bisbee Lake. It's canoeist up in the upper left, coming into a shallower area with rocks. And it's interesting. I do a lot of outdoor painting. I do a lot of painting on the in nature, on the spot. And those paintings often are, what would you say? They're more, you'll see some more of them as we go along here, more detailed perhaps. And as I get into the studio and play with them and work them, I try to boil them down to the essentials. So that's always really my desire, is to keep it really, really simplified. And to me, there's a power in that. So what's next, Yvonne? This is one of my favorite spots. This is actually Albany, and the building in the background is the D&H building. It's now the Chancellery of New York State, where the education to college, the control of the colleges are. But it was once the D&H building, which was the railroad, Delaware and Hudson Railroad that ran up and down. And when I was a kid, I would walk across, there was a bridge across the train bridge across the river, across the Hudson. Rensselaer would be directly behind this, and the river is directly behind this building. In fact, when they built this building, I mean, I grew up with it, and thought it is a magnificent building to see it. But everybody complained about it because it blocked the view of the Hudson River coming down State Street, which is where you would be standing if you were the viewer in this. And I would walk across the river when I was a very small boy with my grandfather. They had a walking bridge on the side of the train, and I would go to the post office where he worked and spend the day with him there. So this lives on. Parts of Albany live on in my memory in a kind of mystical way. I often dream of some of the streets of Albany, and so I dream of the river. I've lived along the river my entire life, so it's a magnificent kind of body of water. So what do we got next?
Before we go on, one person asked, what sizes are we talking about with your work, approximately?
What size? This piece is about 9 by 13 inches, something like that. So this is again, this is an imaginative painting, and it kind of came off of the farm we looked down earlier with that big cloud in the farmland. And it kind of started as a farm where I was going to have another big cloud, and I'm working kind of in a way abstractly in the beginnings of this process, where I would make some big simple abstract shapes, and the thing that makes it realistic really is the little boat that I put in at the end, racing from the storm and the waves. But it was this, I did a big series of these ground planes and sky planes. And this is on Arch's coal press, by the way, for Marguerite. It's a very interesting way to work. It's like you find the painting, and I find that really exciting. So what's next? We can go to the next one, Yvonne, if you would. So this is 11 by 14 inches. This is Mystic, Connecticut. I don't know if Eileen and I, my wife and I, go to Mystic, Connecticut. We used to try to go once every year, once every other year. We like Mystic. Mystic Pizza is right up in the middle on the right there, if you remember the movie. I think it was the movie that drew us there to begin with. But there's also a fantastic museum, a historical boat building museum and art museum in the town, and a lot of shops. I mean, it's classic Americana kind of shopping experience, and right on the ocean. We saw a Turner show. Last time I was there, we went up for a Turner watercolor exhibit, and it was the only place in the United States that this exhibit was shown. It was moving around the world, but it was shown only here, and it was worth a ride to see it. A lot of Turner watercolors and a lot of preparations. This was done many times to get this level of simplification. I started out with a lot more detail in it, and let go of it as I could. Let go of it. I guess you get to a point when you lose the power of interest anyway. So there's nice lost and found edges in this. There's nice open areas where one form flows into the next form. I really like that kind of thing. And you know, America, our small town America, here it is. So what's next, Yvonne? This is actually Amish country in Pennsylvania. This is another like about 11 by 14 inches. And I had done some paintings there years ago. We used to visit, my sister used to live near Lebanon, PA. And if anybody has not ever been there, it's a very interesting place to visit. There's maybe a couple hundred square miles of farmland without any power lines, because the Amish don't use electricity, and there's no telephone poles, no power lines in the way, and it's kind of intriguing. And the Amish are also very intriguing and friendly, and well, more or less friendly. They're definitely in their own world. but lovely farmland, goes on forever. It's like some ideal landscape imagination place, I think, for for landscape painters. And you can go there and paint along the road. Nobody will bother you, and nobody will. They might come and ask you what you're doing and look at it, but it's a lovely place to be. And anyway, Michael Rich says he grew up in Lebanon, so I got a track from him. I forgot he might be here, and I knew, in fact, his family was one of the reasons we first went there. So what's next, Yvonne? So this actually is a little more pushing the edge for me than I usually do. This is a large painting. This is 22 by 30 inches. This is the harbor in Hudson, New York. And if you haven't seen it, I mean, probably a lot of you have been to Hudson to see the art shows and to see, the shops and so forth. It's got a great art scene in Hudson and great restaurants. Kind of haven't been back since Mexican radio closed, but it's a happening little art town. And if you go down to the end of that main street on Hudson, there's a beautiful little area above, elevated, overlooking the Catskill Creek, going into the Hudson River, and out beyond it is the Athens Lighthouse. So the little red triangle out there is the Athens Lighthouse. And it's a majestic space, really pretty. I tried it a bunch of different times, and to me, this was the most successful of them. A lot of reduced information and rhythms, repeating colors, that kind of thing that I like to play with. So yeah, what's next? This is, who knows what this is? Raise your hand. This is Bear Mountain, across from Beacon, one of the most startling kind of structures on the Hudson, I think. If you were driving, there's actually a road through the middle of it. If you go right through the middle of the form, I didn't show it in the painting. Yeah, it's just a powerful, I think they call it the Hudson Highlands as you get down through there. It's just a powerful, powerful place image-wise, and beautiful to paint. And I tried this a number of times too. I did it many times, and I kind of like this one. Got this one going. When you're working in transparent watercolor, the thing that people most often say to me, because I do teach watercolor painting, is that they're afraid of it and that it's hard. But because you can make limited corrections, but you can actually make more corrections than people think. And you can do the tempo of a watercolor is fairly quick. So you can do, I can do 8 a day, 10 a day if I'm on a roll and I don't have anything that's calling my time. So one of the ways you get around the fact that you can't overpaint the way you can in oils, where an oil painting, if you don't like an area, you can paint over it. You can do that, but it doesn't, it's not nearly as effective as it is in oils, and it gets opaque. So you're trying to maintain transparency. That is where the light goes through the paint and hits the paper and bounces back out to your eye. That's what gives watercolor a really unique look. So the way around it is to do multiple ones if you can do that. Not everybody is comfortable doing the same image again and again, but to be quite honest, you make discoveries if you work with an image for a while, whether drawing or whether you're painting it again and again. You make discoveries, and things happen that you could not have planned and could not have foreseen at all. And those moments really are one of the things that really intrigue me and make me love painting so much, is getting to a point where you were working on something, you had an idea, it's not working at all, and something else happens that's even better. And if you can take advantage of it, then you can brag later what a genius you are, but it just happens, and it doesn't feel like it's you that's doing it. It feels like there's an evolution of the ideas happened beyond where you could have gone. So Bear Mountain and the Hudson River in front of us. So what's next? This is Rosendale, a very transparent painting. This is probably a hot press paper arches. I usually only use, I mean, I try everything, but I usually use arches, cold press paper or hot press paper, and this is arches hot press. So arches is a French watercolor paper. It's made out of cotton rag. Most watercolor papers are made out of rags or cloth, not out of wood pulp. Wood pulp is a highly acidic pulp with kind of short fibers, and it's not a very good ground for painting. Doesn't any of you have seen old newspapers that you found in your basement after 50 years? You know they've turned yellow, so that's oxidation. That's really just burning up, actually. This paper is heavy. It's made out of cotton. It's pH neutral, and it lasts, I wouldn't say forever, but it's a very good ground for painting. Very good. And the paints I use are professional quality paints, archival paints, paints that will last. I think that 250 years is what they consider archival these days, but without changing color and without a lot of paints will darken traditionally over time. So we use the ones that are more permanent. I see people are chatting as you go, but I can't quite handle.
I'm
I'll
sorry.
answer the ones I can, but
I'm saving some questions for the end, but regards to this painting, somebody is asking, how did you get that diagonal line?
I did see that go by. And you mean the diagonal line that's on the top? Yes. So that's unintentional, and something was on the paper beforehand. So if you have a piece of watercolor paper that gets, if you touch it with your hands, sometimes and your hands are greasy, or if it somehow is marked with something, you'll get what's called resist. And in fact, there are professional quality called mascoid or wax crayons that people use to get resist. So if you've ever seen John Singer Sargent's watercolors, which I'm sure a lot of you have, he was very big into wax crayons, and a lot of the patterns and textures he gets in his foliage and in bushes are made with painting underneath with a color, putting a wax crayon, and then painting over the top of it. And where the wax crayon is, the color underneath comes through. You don't see the crayon. It's not like a Crayola crayon that has a color. This is very transparent. So something got on that piece of paper, and I liked the painting enough so that I didn't feel that it ruined it. And in fact, it's elicited a nice question. So it's good I left it. So if you've ever walked to the Rosendale Theater from the parking lot in the back, you've walked along this little roadway past the big cheese on the right and then to the theater. And this is why we love Rosendale. This bell tower is for sale, by the way, if any of you are in the market for a huge church. What's next, Yvonne? Did we lose Yvonne? There you are. Okay, so this is Bisbee Lake. This is an example. This is about 15 by 22 inches, which is what we call a half sheet watercolor. A full sheet watercolor paper is 22 by 30 inches. This was cut in half, and that's a nice size to work on outside. Working a full sheet outside is tricky because it's things dry so quickly outdoors. And but this was done on the spot without any fooling around or thinking about it too much or repeated attempts. And I kind of like the way it came out. The woman was totally made up. I made her up as I was painting and felt I needed something more in the foreground. And I was delighted that it actually looked like a woman and wasn't too clunky. So I kept it. And for many years, the Woodstock School of Art Board of Directors went to camp. And thanks, Wayne. Thank you, Wayne. Went to a camp on Bisbee Lake, which is part of the Adirondacks League, is a big kind of organization that has a lot of empty space, unbuilt on space up in the Adirondacks. And we went there maybe 10, 12 years in a row, had nice, played games and swam and rode on canoes. And it's a lovely little barely touched lake. So what's next? Okay, who recognizes this? Raise your hand. This is, again, done on the spot. This is Bard College the walled Italian garden behind Blythewood. Blythewood is part of Bard. It's a think tank of an economic think tank right now. It's been different things over the years, but that's what it is now. And it has this gorgeous, gorgeous garden in the back of it overlooking the Hudson. And it's one of the most magnificent views of the Hudson River along the river. It's got this beautiful big bay full of plants and weeds and things and fish and things jumping. And the railroad goes out along the middle of it out there. So a beautiful, beautiful spot. And yeah, nice one. Nice transparent watercolor. Okay, what's next? So this is one this is about 7 by 14 inches. This is Poppy Lane. It's a place along the rail trail a little south of New Paltz going towards Gardner. And there's still dairy farm down there and still cows out. And I did this many, many times to get this to this point of simplification, and was quite pleased actually with the way it. No, oh, that's a good question, Patty. No pencil drawing on any. Well, the last one of Bisbee had pencil drawing, but none of these have pencil drawing underneath. I draw with the brushes. So, hi Ginger, how you doing? I will tell you when there is pencil drawing, but this was done directly on a piece of watercolor paper. And I try to get them simple enough. That's one of my criteria, is to get the shape simple enough that I can paint it directly without drawing it. And the hardest part were making something that looked like cows drawing directly. If you've ever drawn cows, they can quite easily start to look like something else, like sheep or deer or so. No resist, Cynthia. Not in this one, no. In fact, I don't know if there's any resist in any of these. I tend to avoid the resist, the things that in my mind I consider to be commercial art techniques. So resists, like anyway, they're used a lot to be very technical, to get a little color in a dark area. How much time between painting? I didn't see the rest of your thing, Betty, but maybe we'll get back to that. Hi, Sheila. So what's next? Okay, this is Cloverly. This is a house in Kingston up on West Chester Street. If anybody's been to West Chester Street in Kingston, it's kind of up on a little promontory over between the Rondout and the river. You have these great views if you get up along the edge there, and they have these big yards. And these belong to originally the industrialists in Kingston who owned the brick companies and who owned the different industries that have gone through the cement companies, and there's been a whole series of them over the years as technology went on. And Cloverly is just a magnificent looking structure. I'm told by the people there that it's a little bit in disrepair now, but there's still people living in it. It has an unbelievable view from its backyard of the Rondout harbor and then the Hudson beyond it. And it's just a huge, huge house. And it makes you think, you should have went into making bricks or something. Beautiful place. And I did this is direct, no drawing in it, no other than drawing with brushes. And I did a lot of them to get to this one. So there's a lot of rejects along the line here. So could we go to the next one, please? So this is Waterfalls, little waterfalls up near Catterscale Falls. Beautiful, that beautiful area along the 22A as you go up towards Catterscale, and done simply and directly. And this is a small painting, I think like maybe 5 by 8 inches, something like that. And no pencil drawing, just direct marks, gestural marks. And I like the light of the light on the waterfall is kind of the brightest thing in the picture. So that was my idea. Okay, what's next? This is exciting. It's nice to look at all these. This is a place that's worth a look by any of you aesthetically inclined people, although now I think you might be taking you might be breaking the law getting to it. But this is along 9W beyond Kingston going towards Saugerties. And there used to be a factory there that's been ripped down. And the last time I was near there, there was a lot of signs, keep out signs. But there's a series of waterfalls that come down from Mount Marion to that part of Kingston that just keep dropping down in these beautiful little waterfall steps. You have a little lake and then another waterfall, and finally turning and going along with 9W as it works into Kingston and into the river. So the East Sopas, and there is a train bridge there. I think I made up this train as I did it, but I can tell you I did make up the train. And just direct painting, it's like a tightrope act in a lot of ways. You're walking across it. You got a certain amount of time to do it, and if it works, then you've got one. If it doesn't, you start another one. So, and I like the shapes in this and the rhythms and the light in it. So, yeah. What's next? So this is the Sopas Lighthouse in the Hudson River, on the Hudson River. I think Eileen and I took a boat out, one of the Riffaminko probably, and it was just a gorgeous day. And I took a lot of photographs of the Sopas Lighthouse, and this one was from a photograph, but highly reduced. And that's what I got excited is when I kept trying to do it more realistically, and when I let go of that, and it kind of just turned into a couple shapes, and I liked it. So here it is, the Sopas Lighthouse. I'm sure you've all seen it from different angles. It's one of those really beautiful things out on the river. Okay, what's next? So still lifes. I forget how many still lifes now I have in this. I've never done I don't think I've ever done actually up until, okay, none of that what I just said is true. I would say that 95% of all the still lifes I've ever done have been in classes. I've been demonstrations for classes in Woodstock, and this was one of them. This was a demonstration for a class, and we set up a still life and we painted it. And I would do these for the students to look at as they look at technique and look at what you can pull off under pressure with everybody looking at you and still make it look reasonable. Sometimes that's actually even better. It's like art. There is a performance element to art, I think. I think we all the artists who paint do it for somebody to look at it, and if they can look at it while you're doing it, it's even better. So lost edges, tried to merge forms here and there in there, tried to keep the number of marks and darks to a minimum. I was trying to do less. I'd rather do less than more. Nice gesture to the thing. I don't know. So it's kind of a cool little still life. Done on cold press paper. It's probably a quarter sheet, which is maybe 15 inches by 9 or 10 inches, something like that, in that range. What's next? Another still life, another one done in the class in Woodstock, kind of a happening. A little more complicated than the last one, and a little more probably out of control. I mean, the little bits of mistakes and so forth, and it really just become part of the watercolor painting process. You kind of, hopefully you can enjoy those and accept them, because you do get them. Probably Marlene probably took about a half an hour or something like that to do this. These are quick paintings. I mean, there are paintings in here that have taken months and months. That is not months and months of painting, but they've been sitting around here in my studio for months as I try to figure out how to finish them. So some things take a long time to finish, but the still lifes were done in one session in probably half an hour, 45 minutes. So what's next? There you go. That's another one done in class. Drying time, Betty, is like variable according to the relative humidity in the air. So in a classroom, in an indoor situation, and there are different things we do to keep it from drying too quickly, but in an indoor situation, something like this can be done in a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour. And it's parts of it are drying and other parts of it are wet at the same time. Outdoors, though, it dries sometimes as quickly as you put it down. So you have different problems according to the environment that you're working in. And outdoor painting is challenging in that regard. It's hard to do juicy wet and wet paintings outdoors because it's just dries so quickly. In wintertime and indoors, sometimes they dry very quickly too, depending on the humidity. But it's really, the thing is that, and I think that's an issue in watercolor painting, that people get, Marion, my rejects, I have a pile of them, and sometimes they get burnt. I have a fire every so often. They always have, if they have a white side, they become another painting. So I never waste any of this paper. And eventually, if neither side works out, they get destroyed, really. So
Stats, there's a question regarding this one. If you can talk about the background in
Yeah.
this still life.
Okay. Well, there's not much of a background, is there? It's just a neutral gray. And a lot of these still lifes, a lot of them I just left white of the paper. You know, the bright colors look really good against white paper. This is kind of a neutral background. It's put on simply with a wash. And then the key thing with watercolor painting, to get real color, it has to be against white paper. So these pinks and the reds and the yellows have to be against white paper. Predominance of cool, Carol. I see a note there from Carol that I think she's saying that predominance of cool colors. Paintings, I think, in general, should be on the cool side. That's my own take on them. Hot paintings are hard to. They don't have a comfort zone for me. I read somewhere that if you add up everything in a painting, it should be a gray. So it's pure color against more neutrals that to me are exciting visually. Next one. So this is a large painting. This is in the Boardman show. This is Lake George. And another place that Eileen and I go a lot. One of those islands with the boat coming back. And, you know, this was done in sketches, from sketches and photographs, and then all that stuff was forgotten about, and I could paint it from just memory of these little shapes. There's not much to it when you look at it. And letting the watercolor do the work, letting those washes and things make a strong statement. It's very exciting, still visually exciting for me to look at now, and kind of remember doing it. Little smoke coming off the boat, and that great big space that is Lake George, that big open space. Love it. Love Lake George. Claudia wishes she was there right now. Okay, what's next? Okay, we saw this one once already, but this is Hudson Harbor again. So let's pass on that one. Okay, this is one of the Huguenot houses in New Paltz. If you've ever been to Huguenot Street in New Paltz, some of the oldest houses in the country, I think, are there, 1600s, early 1600s. This one's not one of the oldest, but it's one of the Huguenot houses, and it's one of the bigger ones. The church, the church is in the background on the left, and an inn is on the left below it, reduced to a couple triangles. So this is a painting about triangles to me. The kind of central triangles that go across the windows. It's quite exciting the way that turned out. It's just those two supports on either side that hold it up. The window on the right of this with the green around it, which is a white window, and then losing its edge as it goes into the yellow. Very suggestive of the place, but really very minimally stated. And well, the edges are, you know, there's sharp edges and soft edges. And one thing, I have a intolerance of too many edges. It's like a disease, I think, or a phobia. I have a phobia of too many edges. And so I find when I join areas like in the roof of the building down into the shadows, they all blend together into bigger shapes, which have less tension to them in a way, in my mind, and the way it blends with the tree. So areas where the tree goes into the shadows, the edges disappear. And that often happens in nature if you really look at nature where there are similar values against a tree against a dark background. Sometimes the edge of it, you can't see it, although our minds will supply them for us. And I think it's nice when you do that in an image where you leave things unstated. If you do it right, if you do it enough, the viewer will leap to a conclusion about it and with his own mind supply the parts that are missing. And that's a delight for the viewer. You know, I've seen that in paintings myself where I've looked at a painting and looked and suddenly it came into completion to me, into my mind, and it was my mind who was making that like a leap really to absorb it. So one of the old Huguenot homes, great place. There's a great, right along the Watercolor River. There used to be great corn. They still grow corn there, but it's more and more as touristy kind of stuff. I think the cornfields are starting to be unused. A lot of loosestrife in and around, all around this. So all the painters come in the summertime to paint the loosestrife in the buildings, and it's great. Come and take a tour of these buildings. They're tourable, and anyway, good stuff. Good place. It feels good to be there. You go see the Walloon Church, which is octagonal. I think it's octagonal. It might be hexagonal. Some of you know what I'm talking about. I might be starting to wander a bit, but what's next? This is Hunter Street in Kingston in the Rondout. Just a interesting group of buildings leading up to one of the old churches on lots of churches in the Rondout. If you've ever been down there, I think there's more steeples than any other kind of buildings. Not all churches anymore, but the buildings remain, cars in a row going up the hill. Just nice use of pattern, interesting color. I like the color on the building in the right foreground, the ultramarine blue, the textures of it as it settles into the paper, and the variety between that and a purple and the grayish yellows and greens and browns that kind of support the color, the brighter colors. Nice rhythm to it. You know, very satisfying to me. I really enjoy looking at it. Nice watercolor technique. And this is probably a quarter sheet or a half sheet. I forget now. 15 by 20 inches, something like that. We think smaller as watercolors. You know, oil painters think in feet. We think in inches. So what is next?
Quick question about this one. Is this in the winter? I don't know why it evokes winter to me.
Well, it's probably fall. It's not snow. It's not a snow scene. If it feels like snow to you, I've given you the wrong clues, but it's you know, the trees aren't green, are they? So they're brownish. It's probably a fall or late winter. It could be late winter. It was a bright day though. I love the light in these and the winter days that we're getting right now with the long shadows and the right, really spectacular. It's one of those kinds of days. I don't know if I can show you my palette or not. I don't know if I'll be able to do that, but I'll try at some point. If you remind me, I'll show you my palette. I'm sitting right next to it. I'm sitting right where I paint right now as I'm talking. And my brushes and my paint are on the right here. I guess I can turn this. I don't know. What do you think? There's my palette. And all my brushes and tools. Yeah, so this is the Kingston Lighthouse down at Kingston Point. It's a place we walk a lot in the wintertime, or actually summertime too. I mean, it's even better in the summertime, but we've been down there a few times in the winter and walking along the trails. There's a trolley tracks that come up, and the trolley still runs in the summertime, and a view of the Kingston Lighthouse, which does your palette remain constant? Pretty much. I mean, I'll try anything new I get my hands on, but I have a reduced palette basically. I use a warm and cool of each primary, so I have a alizarin crimson, cadmium red, lemon yellow, cadmium yellow, lemon yellow is cold, cadmium yellow is red, warm, cadmium yellow is warm, lemon yellow is cool. I have cobalt blue and phthalo blue. So that's a basic limited palette. And then I have an example of all the secondaries. So I have a purple, a green, and an orange to make things easy. And I have burnt sienna and raw sienna. So that's my basic palette. And then I find things and I try them. I'll try anything, and you should try it also. Other things come on, but those colors stay stable. And it's very important in watercolor, maybe in painting in general, to have a stable palette that you know how to mix neutrals with it quickly and comfortably, warm and cool neutrals, or how to get an intense purple if you want it, how to get a clean, intense green or a gray green. All colors are, they're either pure and intense or they're neutralized to some degree. So, and you need all of that. You need to be able to do that. And you can't be thinking about it too much. You got to be able to do it comfortably in a way, automatically in a way, but you don't want to do it automatically completely. So this is nice lost edges in here. I love the way the trees disappear against the plane in the background. And I love the way that there's only like a white shape for the roof of the lighthouse, but to me, it's still the Kingston Lighthouse. So very nice picture. What do we got next, Yvonne? This is another Lake George picture. This is probably 8 by 12 at 15 inches, 8 by 15, 8 by 12, somewhere in that range. What I liked about it was the simplicity of it. This is where the boats dock, and I love the gradation in the boat on the right, the way it goes from a dark edge to a graded neutral to the right of it. I love gradations. Gradations are like hot fudge on ice cream or something. They're just so, they are what painting in a lot of ways is about. Your eye loves it. My eye loves it. So there's gradations going in every direction in this painting. There's gradations in the cloud. But you can see how strong, somebody was talking about, I think it was Betty, was talking about edges. You can see how strong this edge is of the boat in towards the middle of the picture, that one edge. That is a powerful edge against the light all around it. And it kind of dissipates as it goes into the main part of the boat. And the clouds themselves, on the left of the clouds, they're very strong and sharp and almost way too dark to be clouds, but somehow it works as it grades back to a lighter form. So that gradation is a tool, it's like that can make things exciting and visually exciting with minimal of effort. And I'm always trying to find ways, better ways, new ways to use them. Lonely guy there, the great room. I love the romantic motifs that often happen in landscapes, with the one guy looking out against the big vast beyond, which is a traditional. Yes, Marguerite, I paint light to dark generally. There's a more complicated answer to that, because I usually paint a mid-value structure. So you have to think about what that means first. When you look at a big piece of watercolor paper and you're not drawing on it, you need something to keep yourself focused and organized. So I do a shadow pattern in mid-values, and then paint the lights on top of that. And then the darks are last as accents. That's my general method. I've been doing that a long time, and I'll stand by it. I like it. It works for me. So it's a way of not getting lost without having pencil lines drawn onto the page. And you need to, a lot of artists paint on tone surfaces. I'm sure you know that. A lot of oil painters paint on tone surfaces. And one of the reasons they do that is it unifies the picture and it gives them something to bounce against. So if you have a mid-value brown on your canvas rather than white is actually one of the most difficult things to paint on, to relate values to, in the sense of relating values. So if you have and pastel artists do this on colored paper all the time, you have that value to bounce off against. You go one step lighter for the lights and one step darker to the darks, and that's called keying your values. Your values have to be keyed to something. They have to make sense within their the way they subsist in themselves. So for me, this mid-value structure gives me, it's not quite what a tone surface, but it's a partially toned surface. So I don't get lost. And one of the things I try to do with painting watercolors is get rid of the whites as soon as possible, because they're very hard to relate things to, because they're not going to be white at the end, usually completely white. So Lake George, what's next? Do we have any more, Yvonne? So another waterfall, a nice another waterfall. A lot of these are places up around Catterskill Falls along the creek that goes up there. Little water coming down, nice shapes, nice simple shapes, big shapes, synthetic shapes. You know, they've been played with a little bit to get these like almost U forms coming down to the bottom. Very simple in a way, but got a certain power to it, I think. Nice color. Probably 15 by 8 by 15 inches, something like that, unframed. They get bigger when you frame them. You can see the arches watermark on the bottom left of this. Yeah, thank you. Yvonne, very good eyes you have. So what's next? What do we got? Okay, this is, how many of you know what Peach Hill is? This is a place this is a park in Poughkeepsie called Peach Hill. It used to be an apple orchard. A lot of apple trees still grow here, peach trees, a lot of fruit trees. And it's got spectacular views of the Hudson Valley from different angles. You can see a number of vistas from the top of this. And my friend Mary Lunt brought me here. She's instrumental in trying to save this and restore it. And they've done a lot to keep it as a wild or a park to where people can come in, rather than somebody's subdivision with houses on the top of it. And this is in the spring when the apple trees blossom. You know, I got 2 great apple tree areas here right around me, the New Paltz apple trees when they bloom in the spring. And we try to get to Peach Hill. I don't stretch the paper, Marguerite. She's asking about stretching paper. I don't know if all of you know about that, but when I first started painting in watercolors, it was common practice to soak your paper in the bathtub or in a sink, lay it on a strong drawing board, and then tape it down with brown paper tape. And if you do it correctly, when it dries, it's like a drum head. There's no wrinkles. So one of the things that bothers people about painting watercolors and wet is you get little wrinkles in the paper, and how do you deal with it? But it's a lot of work to stretch paper. I think if I was rich enough to pay somebody to stretch them all for me, I might consider it again, but it's a lot of work and it's got to be done ahead of time. And I'm not really great at planning like that. So I use Arches 140-pound or 300-pound watercolor paper. And when you're using these watercolor papers, they don't really wrinkle. I mean, the 300-pound watercolor paper does not wrinkle at all. It's like you could use, it's probably could be used as bulletproof protection. It's so strong and tough. So the way around it is to use the better papers. They don't wrinkle. They don't give you those problems, and you don't have to go through the stretching process. And when they dry, they might wrinkle a little when they're wet. The 300-pound doesn't wrinkle at all, but the 140 might wrinkle a bit. Somebody's asking me why I don't use the Arches block. So a block is a watercolor paper bound in like 20 sheets with a plastic or rubberized edge around it. There's a little key on the top, and it's meant for, and there's a cover that you can open up to see the watercolor paper. And it's really meant, it's the most expensive way to buy watercolor paper. We haven't talked about expenses of things here. So blocks are very expensive. They're basically made for outdoor watercolor painting. You have your drawing board and the piece of watercolor paper with you without any needing a drawing board. So it's great for outdoor watercolor painting. I use them if somebody gives me one, I'll use it, but I won't pay for it because they're too expensive. When I buy watercolor paper, I look for sales. And over the years, I have an idea about what it should cost for a sheet of watercolor paper. So if you buy it, excuse me, locally, you're probably going to pay top dollar for it. I'm looking for sales. There's three key elements to a sale for me. That it's a good price, that I don't have to pay postage, and that I don't have to pay sales tax. So those are the three things I look for. And when you've done this all these years, I mean, I can buy now, paint when it's on sale, I buy it. And I don't buy it like because I need it tomorrow. I gotta go out and get one. I have it here. All the things that I use all the time. So that's the way to buy art supplies, is buy them when they're on sale, and not when you need it tomorrow. I love the little movement of this. I like the spatial quality that I got out of this, and I was able to keep those pinks and the flowering apple trees fairly clean and not mess it up too much. There's always a tendency to mess it up, so glad I didn't. Nice sky too. I love the sky in this. Yvonne, thank you. So some of my Woodstock friends are here will recognize this this spot. This is a Sawkill reservoir directly across from the Woodstock School of Art on Route 212. If you walk out of the Woodstock School of Art and walk across the street, there's several paths that take you down either to the top of this dam or to the bottom of it. And it's just a beautiful area, stream, rocks, wildlife, and birds, lots of birds. And the dam itself is made, it's like built at the same time that the Ashokian Reservoir was made, and the blocks in it are carved rock. They're not bricks or cement blocks. These things are carved from solid rock, and they're, that beautiful carving where there's no seams in the rock itself, which I don't know if we can do anymore, really. And there's a pump house up on the left that's not visible in this. That used to be a reservoir. It's not a reservoir anymore. And I painted a lot along the Sawkill. I've taken my classes all along here in different times over the years. And it's just a really beautiful spot. And this is a pretty nice watercolor of that spot. And I love the little bit of yellow foliage glowing there in the middle of where the waterfalls is falling. That to me was a real success. Yvonne, okay. Direct still life, painted at the school, painted right from all the still life materials in my basement right now. So this is all stuff that I see again and again and again. I love the color moving through it. The greens finding their way into the side of the table they're sitting on. I see what Sean's saying, but I can't really see the whole thing, so I can't answer you, Sean, but I know it's got something about old age in it. Anyway, lost edges, nice color bleeding from one form to the next. That's one of the things watercolor does so beautifully, that you got to take advantage of. You got to let them move from object to object and communicate. It makes like a real world, a real visible world, a solid world that's still really totally ephemeral and totally suggested. I love the red tree, the purplish red flowers on one side, and the little pinkish orangish ones on the right. So I like little changes like that. I find it very hard to paint a pumpkin, but that was a pretty good job I did on this one. Very minimal kind of marks that say, if you're kind and you have a little visual imaginations, you could say, well, that's a pumpkin, and I say so. And I love the pear dead center in the middle of the composition. Painted directly, one shot. Oh, here we go. So this is this is Tilson, right up the road from where I live. There's a farm, beautiful farm. I mean, it's beautiful from certain angles. Lots of tractors. I love painting tractors. Work tools, work instruments, work vehicles. And I love when I did this. I did this a lot of times, actually. And I love when I finally let that wheel, the back wheel, be like a grayish, greenish, like grayish green, rather than making it a black, which it really was. Something about that just worked for me. And it brings the colors of the foliage connects it to the tractor. And direct power. It's got power for being direct and without any kind of too much self-consciousness about it. It's really immediate and direct. And I like that. I like that in paintings. Okay, here we go. So I've done a lot of paintings in New York City in the past, maybe 10, 15 years, particularly because my daughter has moved down there and I've gone down a lot to see her. And she might even be here in the background someplace. And this is one of a little tugboat. Hey, there she is. There's Ruth. Hi, Ruthie. I knew it. She said she would come, and there she is. So, yeah, this is the Statue of Liberty and a beautiful tugboat against a nice big abstract sky. The island behind us, in between the tugboat and the Statue of Liberty, is Ellis Island, where all my relatives came into the country. So a lot of history here, and it's a big space when you get out there. It's really a big place, and I like the simplicity of this. So there we go. So I think we got it. This is a picture from the exhibit. What's in the exhibit now? That Lake George one is in the middle there, and a couple big still lifes. I don't think these are pretty big watercolors. They don't really look so big in this, but it's going to be at the Boardman Library for, I think, 2 months, actually, through March 1st. How about that? So got a lot of time. You can go to the Boardman Library and take a look at the show, and you can go to the used bookstore and buy some books, because they got some great art books and got millions of everything there. And so what else we got? Anything else, Yvonne?
Got a picture of
Oh,
you and Ruth and Jeff.
There's myself and Ruth Wally and Jeff, who hung the show under Ruth's severe direction, but I will say. So nice group of people. The people at the Boardman Library and the people I met at the Poughkeepsie Library System are just delightful. So I've really enjoyed being part of this, and I'm glad you all came. And if I can answer questions, or if you have questions, feel free to.
I have all right. So one Shirley Warren raised her hand. Shirley, you can unmute yourself.
So I have a question. Hello, Stats.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I took a class with you probably 40 years ago.
I know that.
Yes, and you were doing much tighter work in those days.
Yes, I was.
Quite detailed. And I remember I was doing a picture of my daughter, who was 3 or 4 at the time. I did a wash, and you came by and you said, "Stop, it's finished." And to me, what you're doing now is more like that wash. And I wonder what changed your style.
Well, I have changed over the years, Shirley, and I think it's very interesting. I think that it's when I began to actually, it's from teaching that's changed my style, and it's from these exercises I do with students. So if you come into my class, we'll do a number of exercises where we actually copy paintings. Most everybody, there's probably 90%.
Hi, Michael. This is Jim. I've always enjoyed your work.
Well, thank you. Jim Bell. Jim, how are you? I know you have, Jim. I've always enjoyed your presence too. From teaching and doing these exercises, I began, which are much simpler than my paintings were. I was trying to do detailed paintings. I was trying to be like Andrew Wyeth Jr. or something like that. And I realized I liked the simplified exercises better, and it's moved my painting towards that. So I've reduced how much I try to say with them, and it's more about color relationships and form and value relationships.
I think you say much more with them now.
Well, thank you, Shirley. I agree. I agree with you 100%. I'm much happier with the work. And it comes also from doing multiple versions of things and learning to do a painting, how to do a painting, how to make it work. I was watching, I don't know how many of you watched the Get Back Beatles special that was on a couple of weeks ago. Maybe it's still on. It's still running on on I think Disney Channel or one of them. But the Beatles came into the studio. One of the great things about this special was you get to see them work. And they came into the studio with 4 or 5 lines and maybe a little bit of a tune, and they began to play it over and over again, and they would add things to it. And you watch them actually create some of the songs in the Get Back album, like Get Back itself, which they just created while you watched. I mean, it was very exciting. And that's the process that I really have begun to use with painting, is just to do them again and again until I can get something that's halfway decent that I can show the public. And a lot of things, many are called and few are chosen. So I do a lot of work, and only some of it really gets used. And that's how you get to where you want to be. I think that's where I want to be, doing it that way, though. You got to be willing to do it, though. You got to be willing to work at it.
So Stats, earlier on, Stacy Flint asked, when you let go of the details, does that mean that you start over a new work, a new piece? Like as you're working, is that what
Well,
you're...
letting go of the details is a metaphor of, so what I want with details, I want to use details the way I use any other design element. So there's different design elements we use in paintings, the relationship to shapes, the moving color, taking color, moving it around a picture. And detail is used that way as well, where you have a piece of detail that comes to a specific thing, becomes itself at a moment, but the rest of it is more out of focus. So it's points of focus within a larger, generally more unfocused area. And I find that just as exciting as putting a red against a green, or a red against a gray, where it's really red and bright against a more neutral background. So it's another tool of design.
Mhm.
So that's the way I think about it. And detail should be used that way, just like everything else in painting.
Does anybody have any further questions? You can raise your hand or you can unmute yourself.
I'm here, Stacy.
Stacy, how you doing, Stacy?
I want to tell you, I've been commenting all along, but it's not showing up for some reason. Everybody else's is showing up. I don't know why. But
Well, that's because we don't like you.
No, not at all.
No, I don't know. I mean, I can't see the chats actually.
I did get your one. Oh, I see Suzanne also did the same scene. Yeah, yep. I see some. Maybe it's just not other
I
people.
can see
are
chats
seeing
right
them.
now.
yeah, I saw everybody else's, but mine didn't show up. Anyway, so you were talking about doing the same scene over and over, and I just
Yeah.
did made a comment that Cezanne did that too. And I think Matisse did it too. Like the
I
same
think a lot
scene
of artists
repeated.
do it. Yeah,
Who?
I think many artists work that way because it's,
Yeah.
we didn't talk about process as for an artist in this,
Ooh.
but we all have a process or a way of working that enables you to arrive at an image that you're willing then to be able to show to other people. So in my case, it's trying them and playing with them, and some people will, just draw until I get it right. I like to just paint until I start to see things happening. And you really see there's moments when you have a little epiphanies along the way where something happens. It's you in a way doing it because you're doing it, but you didn't plan it, and it didn't, and you go, oh, that's what I want. I can do that now. So it's process. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Let's see. Marguerite also has a question. She has her, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, Stats.
Hi, Marguerite.
Hi. I don't know if we've ever met in person, but I've been at.
Well, I know your name very well.
Well, I followed your work avidly. I really appreciate, you can look at your work and say, oh, that's Stats. And so I'm getting ready to hang a show, and there's like 60 pieces, and I'm looking at it, and I'm really excited to be showing my work because it's been, drawn out 2 years, but I don't really have that fingerprint yet.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to be okay with that. And then the last 2 pieces I framed are watercolor little landscapes. I work with watercolor and ink, and it's much more precise. But the little landscapes I'm kind of delighted with because they're much more free form. And anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there, this journey of an artist. And
yeah, it's hard. It's hard to get a I mean, you don't have to be perfectly all the same either, but I mean, I think it all happens for you over time, that you can't make it happen,
Yeah.
whatever,
So,
whatever
yeah,
it is.
I'm just trying to let that be, that whole
I think
idea.
that's perfect. That's a
Just let-
perfect
Okay.
answer. Let
Anyway, I
it
just
be.
want to put that out there it's just been an interesting process to look at my work and think that I haven't really achieved that level of consistency.
Hi, Colin.
Thanks for your response.
You're welcome, Marguerite. Good luck
Thanks.
with your show.
Thanks.
So we have one more question. I'll take, Janine has her hand raised.
Hey,
Janine,
Stats,
how
how
are
are
you?
you? Good. So I have a question for
Yes.
you, which is, what was it? I'm sure you tried a bunch of things before you decided that like your voice was watercolor. And I want to know what it was relative to other things that you must have tried as you were learning to paint. And then I have a related question, just because I have a hunch. So many people are scared of watercolor, including me. It's like so intimidating, and you feel like you got to be patient. And if you go too fast, you'll screw it up. I want to know if meditation and watercolor are like correlated for you.
Oh, interesting question, because I'm a meditator. So you know that, right, Janine?
I know that. So I'm asking.
Yeah. So, well, I think meditation does inform what I do to some degree. I do love the Zen paintings, the suggestive, simple Zen one stroke, and how one stroke can be a very communicative tool, saying things simply and directly and without any excess. And I think meditation leads into it. And I've always loved watercolor. I mean, I still do some oils. I still have a lot of oil paint, and I actually haven't done any this year, but I did a couple last year. But I just love the medium watercolor. I just have worked so long at it, in a way, invested so much time in it, and I've taught it for so long that it's very intimate and it's very comfortable. And I can tell you that if you have a few tools to work with, mental tools in dealing with watercolor, it takes away a lot of because what you express is what I hear all the time from students is, oh, it's too hard, I'm scared of it. And you just need to have a couple tools that enable you to be comfortable with it enough to make a painting. And it's not that much, really. And you can learn it. You can learn to do it. So come and see me, all right?
I'm gonna come take a class with you. You're gonna teach me. You're gonna get me over my fear.
I would be delighted, believe me.
This has been amazing. I love your work. This was a real treat. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, everybody. I'm sorry if we didn't get to your question, and appreciate you guys hanging in there. And thank you so much, Stats, for sharing your work and your process. And
Yep. It was a delight. It was a lot of fun.
Beautiful. So please visit Stats online, statsfasoldt.com. I'm sure if you drop him an email, he will gladly add you to his mailing list. Speaking of his upcoming events, he's going to be speaking in person.
Hi, Tracy.
With the Jewish Federation of Dutchess County on Wednesday, January 12th at 11:30. There is registration required. You can, I've put the link in the chat box for you to go here to sign up. I just wanted to thank you again. I really appreciate your time, and this has been a great evening.
Yeah, well, thank you, Yvonne. You made it possible.
Thank you.